I started the paint job with a base coat of dark red. Going for a more chromatic style, I darkened down scarlet red with a bit of scurvy green. This first layer was applied using a big makeup brush through the stippling technique, making sure I got into every nook and cranny. Using pure scarlet red, I repeated the previous step. While this layer was applied over all of the model, I didn't bother with the hard to reach areas. Those I kept dark to represent shadows. Before I began highlighting, I still wanted a bit more depth on my shadows, so I created a wash adding some dark brown to my dark red mix. I made sure to spread the wash evenly and that not too much paint was pooling anywhere. While this homemade wash will not have as good of a finish as a proper wash, my aim is to, alongside the previous two steps, create a rich base from where to begin my highlights, so you can consider all of the three steps together as the base coat. To begin highlighting, I made use of the flat side of a sponge. This way, the paint can be easily kept away from the recesses. Since the wash darkened down the whole model, I went back to pure scarlet red for the first coat. A bit of water was added to help the paint flow, but I made sure to remove any excess on the palette to avoid big splotches. Next was to mix some vermilion onto the scarlet red, and while the previous layer was applied over all of the model, this time I made sure to hit only the areas exposed to my light source. In this case, I chose an imaginary sun from above. The color may look too striking at first, but it will dull down as it dries. Using pure vermilion and the pointy end of the sponge for more precision, I applied the final layer of sponging within the previous one. Due to red being a color which requires multiple coats to build up and my sponging being diluted with water, there was still space to push my highlights a bit more. Using the side of my brush makes edge highlighting much easier, as it reduces the chances of making a mistake. With that, the armor was finished, and get a good look at it now because you'll see it look different in a moment, as my first attempt at chipping was a failure and I had to do some corrections. I tried again with the style I was familiar with, using my trusty sponge. I am taking the process slowly, poking at the same area a couple of times till I see the paint has properly created the damaged look I'm looking for. Initially, I focus on areas I'd imagine are more likely to be damaged, before I move on to adding a couple more spots here and there, though being careful not to overdo it. Using the very tip of the sponge and removing most of the paint from it, I'll create deeper chips within the previous ones, by carefully poking at those areas again. Removing most of the paint from the sponge is important, since we are looking to get only the smallest of dots in this second application. I applied a couple base coats to see how the model was coming along, and while I was trying to do some pink washing with oils, I challenged myself not to use them in this model, so instead I made use of the water trick. This is done by first diluting black paint into a wash. With the brush, I'll apply water into the recess. And using a brush with a fine tip, I'll simply touch it to the recess and the paint will flow into it by itself, providing me with an easy and precise recess wash. The initial water application will help the paint settle on the recess without leaving coffee stain marks. We just have to be careful not to apply too much water, or stain marks such as this one will appear. Next, I'll be painting some black armor in a more clean style. Since no color is darker than black, I had to begin from a lighter tone, and leave the black for the shadows. In this case, I chose dark gray. Since I wanted dark gray to be the color of the highlights, I tuned everything down with a wash of diluted black paint, making sure paint pools only on the recesses and the flatter parts just receive an homogeneous filter over them. Because I didn't notice enough of a change between the shoulder pad and the flatter areas of the arm, I applied a second coat of the wash, though I'll admit it should have been a bit more diluted. The aim is to get an in-between color of dark gray and black on the flatter panels and the pure black on the recesses due to the wash pulling there. My flatter panels were a pinch too dark. Anyhow, from here I made use of the side of the brush to once again edge highlight the dark gray. Remember, you don't have to highlight every single edge, especially the ones over on the parts that are facing down. And if you wish to add a pinch of a lighter color for some further highlights, consider not aiming to get them within the previous ones, but making them the same size and applying them only on some key areas. Finally, I'll do some smooth blends on the shoulder pads. I marked out the brighter areas with a lighter gray over the dark gray, leaving the bottom part of it in shadow. Diluting some black paint like I've been doing time and time again, though removing most of it on a paper towel, I'll glaze from top to bottom. Finishing the brushstroke towards the bottom will ensure most of the paint will deposit there, and just leave a thin filter over the rest. After 2 layers, a third one was applied, but only on the bottom half. And a final one was applied at the very bottom to finish the transition. If you've reached this point, thank you for watching all the way through. As always, special thanks go to my patrons, old and new. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get to them shortly. But that is all for today. Hope to see you again next week.